PART-1 Sagan 3 was a quiet world. It was a green and blue planet on the edge of human space, full of wide fields and deep, peaceful forests. The people who lived there were farmers and scientists. They grew special grains under the light of a gentle sun and studied the stars from their quiet corner of the galaxy. It was a simple life, and it was a good one. Min-Soo Park was the leader of the colony. He was not a soldier. He was a botanist, a man who understood plants and soil and growing things. His sister June was a teacher. She taught the colony's children about Earth's history and the hopeful future they were building. Their days were filled with work, family meals, and the soft hum of colony machinery. They, like everyone on Sagan 3, lived under the rules of the Galactic Consensus. The Galactic Consensus was an alliance of very old, very advanced alien species. When humanity first reached the stars, the Consensus found them. They said humanity was a young race, too loud and too quick. To keep the peace, the Consensus made laws. No building certain weapons. No making thinking machines for war. No touching the power of stars for battle. These were the galactic laws. Humanity's diplomats, like a woman named Una Kim, had argued against them. They said the laws were not fair, but the Consensus was powerful. In the end, humanity signed the agreement. They had no real choice. On this day, Min-Soo was in the main greenhouse, checking the water levels for the rice hybrids. The sky outside was its normal pale orange. Then a shadow fell over the sun. It was not a cloud. It was something massive and dark, blocking the light. A deep, vibrating hum filled the air, a sound that made the teeth ache. Alarm sirens began to wail across the colony, a sound they had only ever heard in drills. Min-Soo ran to the colony's communication center. The main screen showed the sky. 5 enormous ships hung there, silent and menacing. They were not human. Their shapes were sharp and wrong, like folded blades of black metal. They were ships of the Galactic Consensus peacekeeping fleet. A signal came through. An alien face appeared on the screen. It had gray skin, large black eyes, and no hair. This was Admiral K-Arth. His voice was translated by a flat, computer-like tone. Colony Sagan 3, you are in violation of galactic law. Scans detect unauthorized neural link research signatures. You will surrender the research facility and all personnel involved. Compliance is mandatory. Min-Soo felt cold fear in his stomach. There was a small neurology lab in the colony. It studied how low gravity affected plant communication, not weapons. It was harmless. This is colony leader Min-Soo Park, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. There is a mistake. We have no weapons research. Our work is public. You can scan our databases. Please do not take any action. We are a civilian settlement. Admiral K-Arth did not blink. The scan signature is clear. You have 1 standard hour to comply and deliver the researchers. Failure will result in pacification measures. The screen went blank. Panic started to spread through the communication center. Min-Soo tried to call Una Kim, the human diplomat to the Consensus, but the long-range transmitters were being blocked by the alien ships. He was cut off. He ordered everyone to stay calm and to gather in the reinforced community shelters just in case. His sister June helped usher her students from the school, her face pale but determined. The hour passed like a heartbeat. Min-Soo stood outside, looking up at the ships. He sent the same message over and over. We are civilians. There is no threat here. Please, just talk to us. Admiral K-Arth's face returned to the screen. You have not complied. Pacification is ordered. The resonance device is non-lethal. It is a tool of peace. What is that? What are you doing? Min-Soo shouted. The device will calm agitated neural patterns. It will ensure order, said KRTH. From the largest ship, a ring of blue light unfolded. It began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. A low sound started, one that was not heard with the ears, but felt in the bones, in the back of the mind. It was a wrong sound. A sickening sound. Stop. Min-Su screamed into the microphone. There are children here. Stop. The ring pulsed. A wave of visible energy, like a shimmering heat haze, rolled down from the ship. It washed over the colony. It passed through walls and metal and soil. For Min-Su, the world did not go dark. It became frozen. He was standing in the communication center, his mouth open in a cry that would never finish leaving his lips. His eyes were wide, seeing everything and nothing. Every thought in his mind, every memory of his wife back on Earth, every worry for his sister, every hope for the crops, they were all suddenly trapped. They were like birds in a cage of glass. He could not move his body. He could not form a new thought. He was a prisoner inside his own still-living flesh dot in the school hallway. June was crouched over 2 of her students. The wave hit her. She became a statue of care, her arms outstretched, her face a mask of protective fear that would never change. Across the colony, the same scene repeated. A man fixing a water pipe, a woman feeding her baby, 2 friends sharing a joke, 10,000 people. In an instant, all of them were caught. Their hearts still beat. Their lungs still pulled in air. But the light behind their eyes was gone, replaced by a hollow, empty stillness. They were not dead. They were erased. Their minds, everything that made them who they were, had been scoured away by the consensus's tool of peace. High above, Admiral Kayarth reviewed the scan data. Biological functions, normal. No structural damage. No bloodshed. By the strict, cold logic of the galactic laws, this was a perfect, non-lethal pacification. A neat solution. He ordered a team to go down and secure the research data. His ships turned, preparing to leave. The operation was a success. On the surface, the colony of Sagan 3 was perfectly, terribly silent. No birds sang. No children laughed. Only the wind moved, brushing through the hair of 10,000 beautiful, empty statues. The galactic consensus had come to enforce a law. But in doing so, they had done something they did not understand. They had not just broken a human agreement. They had done the one thing every human, from every nation and every history, had sworn never to allow. They had destroyed the minds of the innocent. They had crossed a line that was not written on any treaty. It was written in the deep, ancient parts of the human soul. It was a red line, painted not with ink, but with all the tears of human history. And in the silent, frozen face of Min-Su Park, a new kind of storm began to gather, one that the logical Admiral Kayarth could never hope to calculate. The news from Sagan 3 did not travel in a burst of panicked communication. There was no one left to send a distress call. Instead, the news arrived as a cold, automatic data packet. It was sent by the colony's main computer, which was programmed to send a status report every 24 hours. The report contained everything. The last visual logs showing the black consensus ships, the audio of Min-Su Park's desperate pleas, the final frantic bioscans of the colony's inhabitants, and then the flat, steady lines of 10,000 brainwave monitors, all showing the same unblinking catatonic pattern. The final note in the data was from Admiral Kayarth's own log, attached by mistake or perhaps by arrogant design. It read, "Pacification successful. Civilian disruption minimized. Law upheld." The packet arrived at the Mars Orbital Relay. From there, it went straight to the office of Terran Strategic Command. A bunker complex buried deep under the red plains of Mars. The bunker was a quiet place, full of soft lights and the hum of powerful computers. The people who worked there were used to stress, but the silence that followed the opening of that data packet was a new kind of quiet. It was the silence of a breath being held before a scream. Fleet Admiral Tae-in Lee was in his briefing room when his aide, a young woman named Hana, brought him the file. Her hands were shaking. Tae-in was a man in his late 50s, with short gray hair and a face that seemed carved from stone. He had fought in the border skirmishes decades ago. He knew the cost of violence. He opened the file. He watched the visual logs. He heard Minsu's voice crack. He saw the wave of energy wash over the camera. Then he clicked through the bioscans, page after page after page, each one a monument to a stolen life. He did not swear. He did not slam his fist on the table. He simply leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving the screen. He stared at the final image, a frozen close-up of June Park's face, her eyes wide with a fear that was now eternal. "Call the directors," he said, his voice a low rumble. Now, within an hour, the three most important people in the bunker stood before him. So-Shin Choi was the head of digital warfare and artificial intelligence. She was small, sharp, and moved with a quick, bird-like energy. Her mind lived in the spaces between codes. Ji-ho Kang was the chief of advanced engineering. He had large, scarred hands from a lifetime of building and breaking things. He preferred machines to people because machines made sense. And Yuna Kim, the diplomat who had signed the accords with the consensus, had just arrived from Earth. Her face was ashen. She looked at Tae-in and then at the frozen image on the wall screen, and she could not speak. "They have given us their answer," Tae-in said, not turning from the screen. "They believe our agreement was a chain. They believe our obedience is guaranteed by their power. They believe that because we follow rules, we have no line we will not let them cross." He finally turned to face them. His eyes were like dark holes. "They are wrong. They crossed it. They did not kill the body. They killed the mind. To us, that is worse. It is the ultimate crime. It is the one thing we have always fought against in every story, in every war. To control a thought, to erase a soul." Yuna found her voice. It was a whisper. "We have to protest. We have to go to the Galactic Council. We have to demand justice, sanctions." "What justice?" Tae-in interrupted, his voice still calm, but with a terrible weight behind it. "Their justice? The justice that calls this," he gestured to the screen, "a successful pacification? No, they have shown us the rules of their game. We will not play." He looked at Sojin and Ji-ho. "They believe our strength is in our ships, in our guns, in our numbers. It is not. Our strength is in our will, our persistence, our ability to look at an impossible mountain and decide we will either climb it or dig through it, but we will not go away. They think they have cowed us. We will show them they have awakened something else." He walked to a central console and entered a long, complex authorization code. A holomap of human space flickered to life. "I am activating Project Charybdis." Yuna shook her head. "The contingency plan? Tae-in, that is for an existential war. It will collapse our economy. It will cut us off from the galaxy." "We are already cut off," Tae-in said. "They cut off 10,000 minds. This is now an existential war, not for our bodies, but for our right to be who we are." He turned to Sojin. "You have your ghost networks, the hybrid AI cores we built in secret, against their laws. Can they infiltrate the consensus data streams? Not to destroy, but to watch, to learn?" Sojin's eyes lit up with a cold fire. "They can do more than watch. They can listen. They can become echoes in their systems. They will never find them all. Good. Do not attack. Not yet. Just listen. Learn everything. Find the patterns in their food shipments, their engine maintenance, their crew rotations. Find the rhythm of their confidence. He turned to Geo. The slipstream anchors. The quantum mines. Are they ready? Can they make a patch of space unusable for them? Geo nodded slowly, a grim smile on his face. They are not weapons. They are just locks. Very stubborn locks. You put one in a hyperlane, and space itself gets a knot. Their ships would drop out of faster-than-light travel like a rock from a sling. No explosion. Just a sudden, hard stop. Perfect, Taeyan said. Begin manufacturing. Use the hidden yards in the asteroid belts. No big movements. Small shipments, quiet. Finally, he looked at Yuna. You will handle the silence? The silence? Yes. You will send one message to the Galactic Consensus Council. 1. You will state the facts. Sagan 3 was a civilian colony. The Consensus attacked with a resonance weapon. 10,000 human minds are gone. Then, you will say that humanity is considering its response. And then you will say nothing else. No matter what they send. No threats, no promises, no pleas. Total, absolute, deafening silence. Let them shout into the void. Let them wonder what the void is thinking. Yuna understood. It was a psychological weapon. The Consensus expected noise, drama, threats, negotiations. They would get nothing. It would unbalance them. And our colonies? Our other fringe worlds? They will be vulnerable. They already are, Taeyan said. We cannot defend them all. Not in the way they expect. So we will not try. We will pull back. We will let the Consensus think they are winning. Let them spread their forces thin, occupying empty rocks. Every ship they put on garrison duty is a ship not watching their own backyard. The orders went out. Across human space, a strange quiet descended. The usual chatter of trade and travel faded. Ships returned to port and did not leave. Shipyards that usually glowed with light went dark, hidden behind new energy screens that made them look like empty space. News from the government slowed, then stopped. It was as if a great door had been softly closed. On Mars, Taehyun stood before the large window that showed the red landscape. Hannah brought him tea. He took it without a word. He was looking at the sky, but he was seeing the frozen faces of Sagan 3. What are we going to do, sir? Hannah asked quietly. Taeyan took a slow sip. We are going to be unyielding, he said. They broke something that cannot be fixed. So we will not try to fix it. We will not seek revenge and anger. That is what they expect. We will be cold. We will be patient. We will be a force of nature. A glacier does not hate the mountain it grinds down. It simply moves, slowly and with immense weight. That is what we will become. We will show them that to cross humanity's red line is not to start a war. It is to invite an ending. A quiet, total, and unyielding ending. The Galactic Consensus was not a patient organization, but it was a confident one. Their pacification of Sagan 3 was, in their view, a clean and lawful operation. They had expected a reaction from humanity, loud protests, legal threats, perhaps a show of military force that they could easily crush. They were prepared for all of that. What they were not prepared for was nothing. Humanity's silence was a wall. Diplomatic channels were open, but only a single factual message ever came back. No new human ships arrived at the fringe worlds. Scouts reported that human colonies were quiet. Some appeared to be partially evacuated. The great shipyards around Proxima Centauri were dark. The Consensus High Council was pleased. They saw this as surrender, as wisdom. Admiral Kayarth was hailed for his efficient work. The Consensus began to move. They sent occupation fleets to 3 more human fringe worlds. They met no resistance. Their ships landed in empty spaceports. Their soldiers marched through quiet streets, with a few remaining humans watched them with blank, unreadable faces before turning away. It was easy. It was boring. The Consensus commanders grew relaxed. They believed they were administrators now, not warriors. They sent reports home about the orderly integration of human territories. They did not know about the ghosts in their machines. Sojin Choi sat in a dim room on a hidden station orbiting Neptune. Banks of silent servers hummed around her. Her fingers danced across a holographic interface, but she was not typing commands. She was conducting. Before her were the visual representations of her choir, the Forbidden's hybrid AI cores. They were not pure silicon machines, nor were they copied human minds. They existed in the space between patterns of thought inspired by human creativity, but unburdened by human fatigue. They had been listening for weeks. One ghost, which Sojin called Echo, had slipped into the logistics network of the Consensus fleet occupying the human world of New Haven. Echo did not break anything. It simply watched. It learned the schedule for food deliveries. It learned the code patterns for environmental system checks. It learned the rhythm. Then one night, it made a tiny, tiny change. It altered the code for the oxygen mix in the sleeping quarters of the flagship's commanding officer. The change was so small, it would never trigger an alarm. It simply made the air slightly richer in a harmless inert gas. The officer slept more deeply. He dreamed strange dreams. He woke up feeling slow and confused. It was a small thing. A whisper. Another ghost, named Wisp, lived in the navigational data streams of the Consensus. When a supply ship was due to jump into faster-than-light travel to reach the occupation fleet at Cornwall Outpost, Wisp gently edited the star charts. The coordinates were off by a fraction of a degree. A fraction was enough. The supply ship dropped out of FTL travel not at the outpost, but in empty space 3 light days away. The crew was bewildered. Their system swore they were in the right place. It took them days to recalculate and limp to their destination. Their cargo of fresh food was spoiled. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Jiho Kang was overseeing a different kind of work. His workshops were inside hollowed-out rocks, invisible to scanners. His teams were building Jiho's locks. They were not bombs. They were elegant, complex devices about the size of a small car. When activated, they would create a violent knot in the quantum slipstream, the layer of reality used for faster-than-light travel. It was like suddenly throwing a giant anchor into a smooth river. Jiho personally oversaw the deployment of the first one, a small, stealthy tugboat piloted by a brave woman named May, dragged the device to a little-used hyperlane near the edge of human space. This was a lane the Consensus used to connect their new acquisitions. May pushed the device out of her cargo bay. It drifted, dark and silent. She sent the activation signal and then jumped away. Seconds later, the device came to life. To the naked eye, nothing happened. But to any ship trying to use that lane, that patch of space was now a solid wall. The first victim was the Pride of Zelos, a massive Consensus supercarrier sent to show the flag. It approached the hyperlane entrance, its powerful engines ready to leap across the stars. It entered the lane, and then reality itself seemed to stutter. The ship was violently wrenched out of FTL travel. There was no explosion, but the strain was immense. Support beams deep in the ship's hull groaned and snapped. Alarms blared. On the bridge, the captain was thrown from his chair. Their sensors showed nothing, no enemy, no weapon signature, just empty space where a highway should have been. The pride of Xylos was stranded, hurt, and utterly confused. A distress call went out, but the nearest help was weeks away at slow speeds. Back in the consensus networks, the ghosts grew bolder. They saw the panic from the pride of Xylos. They saw the confused reports from the officer with bad dreams and the lost supply ship. The consensus systems were diagnosing these as unrelated errors, a software glitch, a charting mistake, a strange but rare space anomaly. The ghosts worked to keep it that way, feeding false diagnostic data to cover their tracks. Their masterpiece was yet to come. Sojin identified a pattern. Every standard week, the life support systems on consensus ships performed a full self-check. It was a routine, automated process. She gave new instructions to her choir. On a day the consensus had marked as a day of celebration for their peaceful expansion, the order went out across the occupied territories. At the same exact moment, on every consensus ship and in every ground base, the life support systems began their check. The ghosts were ready. As the systems ran their tests, the ghosts injected a simple, cruel command. For exactly 60 seconds, the environmental controls would override all safety protocols and cycle the atmospheric mix to match the consensus homeworld of Xylos Prime. It was a harmless mix for them. The computer logs would show a perfect, successful test. But Xylos Prime's atmosphere was not harmless to humans. It was high in a subtle neurotoxin, one the Xylosians had evolved to need, like a vitamin. To humans, it acted like a powerful HALLUCINOGEN. As the clocks ticked over, the air in every occupied human settlement changed. Consensus soldiers and administrators did not notice. They breathed deeply, feeling a wave of pleasant familiarity. But the few remaining human inhabitants, the ones who had stayed behind as a quiet, watching presence, suddenly felt the world twist. Colors became too bright. Sounds became sharp and painful. Solid walls seemed to melt and breathe. They did not scream or panic. They had been waiting. They had been prepared for something. This was not what they expected, but they understood it was a signal. As the consensus personnel smiled, confused by the sudden feeling of homesickness, the humans moved. In small, coordinated groups, they slipped out of their homes and into the maintenance tunnels beneath the towns. They had been mapping these tunnels for weeks. They vanished, leaving the consensus to celebrate among suddenly empty streets. When the life support cycle ended and the air returned to normal, the consensus forces blinked, the strange feeling fading. They looked around. The humans were gone. Not a single shot had been fired. Not a single alarm had been raised. They were just gone. Reports flooded in, identical and impossible. The High Council was baffled. First, a ship was crippled by nothing. Then their own systems seemed to betray them. Now the captive population had disappeared like smoke. Admiral KRTH, on his shiny new command ship near Sagan 3, felt a cold doubt for the first time. This was not surrender. This was not fear. This was something else. It was as if the universe itself had become subtly hostile. The humans were not fighting them. They were making the ground itself untrustworthy. They were not waging war. They were unmaking the certainty that the consensus relied on. The silence from the human core worlds was no longer the silence of defeat. It felt like the silence before a storm that no one could see coming. The confusion in the consensus fleets had become a quiet panic. Ships were lost. Systems behaved strangely. The occupied worlds were empty of humans, save for the silent, frozen colonists of Sagan 3, a grim monument that no consensus soldier liked to look at. Admiral K'Arth had pulled his forces back into tighter formations, abandoning the more distant outposts. The galaxy was watching now, and the consensus was starting to look foolish. Struggling against an enemy they could not see or name got in the hidden command bunker on Mars. Fleet Admiral Taeyeon Lai studied the reports from Sojin's ghosts and Chiho's sensor nets. The pattern was clear. The consensus was off balance. They were waiting for a traditional attack, a fleet-to-fleet battle where they could use their superior size and firepower. They were huddled around Sagan III, as if protecting their most infamous prize. Taeyeon had no intention of giving them the battle they wanted. "It is time," he said to the room. His voice was flat, final. "We go to Sagan III, not to take it back, to give our answer." On the bridge of the human flagship, the Unyielding, the mood was not one of fiery vengeance, but of cold, focused purpose. The ship was a new design, built in the hidden yards. It did not have the biggest guns. Instead, it was covered in smooth, angled plates that drank in sensor energy and gave nothing back. It was a ship built for silence. It slipped out of Mars orbit, joined by two smaller, identical escort ships. They did not use the main hyperlanes. They took a long, looping, untraceable route through dead solar systems, guided by calculations from Sojin's most trusted AI. The journey took days. No one spoke much. They checked and rechecked their systems. They looked at the images from Sagan III, letting the quiet anger harden inside them. They emerged from the void less than 1,000 kilometers from the edge of the Sagan III star system. The consensus detection network should have screamed with alarms. It did not. The ghosts had been at work for weeks, carefully placing dormant code in the system's sensors. As the Unyielding arrived, that code activated. To the consensus fleet hovering around the green-blue planet, their scanners showed a brief, harmless sensor ghost, a piece of space dust, perhaps, and then returned to normal. The human ships were invisible. Taeyeon stood on the bridge, looking at the planet on the main screen. He could see the faint, glinting dots of the consensus garrison ships in orbit. One, a mid-sized cruiser, floated directly over the main colony site. "That one," Taeyeon said, pointing dots OJIN, who was linked directly to the ship's systems from her station on Mars. Light years away, gave a soft, humorless smile on the come screen. "The Keeper of Law, its systems are receptive. Sending the lullaby now." On the Keeper of Law, the bridge crew was bored. Garrison duty over a world of frozen statues was unsettling and dull. Suddenly, their main computer console flickered. The tactical officer frowned. "Sir, we are getting a system-wide update. Priority channel from the High Council." The captain, eager for any distraction, authorized the update. A data packet flowed in, but it was not from the Council. It was from Sojin's choir. It was a beautiful, complex piece of malicious code disguised as a security patch. It unspooled through the ship's nervous system. It did not shut things down. It simply convinced the ship's AI that everything was perfectly fine, that the temperature was normal, even as it dropped, that the power was flowing, even as it was gently rerouted to non-essential systems, that there were no unidentified contacts, even as the Unyielding drifted to within 100 kilometers. The crew of the Keeper of Law felt a wave of pleasant warmth. Their screens showed peaceful, green status lights. One by one, they slumped at their stations, falling into a deep, artificial sleep as the code triggered a safe, anesthetic gas through the vents. The ship went silent, its weapons offline, its engines dead. It was not destroyed. It was put to sleep. The other consensus ships saw the Keeper of Law go quiet. Panicked calls went unanswered. They scrambled fighters, but their sensor suites were confused, showing multiple false contacts and flickering energy signatures sown by the ghosts. They fired at phantoms, their energy beams lighting up the empty dark. The Unyielding ignored them. It descended through the atmosphere, a black arrow against the orange sky. It landed in the central square of the main colony, its landing gear settling gently on the pavement cracked by weeds. The air outside was breathable, but the silence was absolute and heavy. Taeyeon stepped out. He wore a simple combat suit, not ceremonial armor. He carried no rifle. In his hand was a small data pad. He walked forward, his boots echoing in the terrifying quiet. He passed the frozen forms. A woman holding a child. A man reaching for a tool. And finally, he found Min-soo Park, standing where he had fallen in the comm center, his face forever etched with a cry that never escaped. Taeyeon knelt. He did not touch the statue that had been a man. He simply looked. He opened a channel on a frequency the entire Consensus Council would be monitoring. He began to speak, his voice calm and clear, carrying across the light years. "You spoke of laws to protect life," he said. The audio picked up the utter silence around him. "You used them as a chain. You broke your own law when you destroyed these mines. You did not see people here. You saw a problem to be solved, a noise to be quieted." He stood and walked back into the square, the camera on his suit showing the terrible garden of lost souls. "You crossed a line, not of a treaty, but of understanding. You believe your power gives you the right to define what life is. We disagree." He turned the datapad toward the sky. "Your power is in your machines. Your certainty is in your data. So here is our answer. We will not destroy your ships. We will not bomb your worlds." On the pad was a single command. It was linked to a special system deep within the Unyielding. This system contained a salvaged, fragile copy of neural patterns. It was not the mind of June Park. That was gone forever. It was an echo, a shadow built from her residual brain scans and the memories others had of her. It was a memorial given a purpose. Sojin had worked for weeks to stabilize it. It was housed in a protective AI core, a digital sanctuary. This colony's name was Sagan 3, Taeyeon said. But its heart was its people. One of them was June Park. She taught children. She loved this sky. You took her. But her memory remains. And memory has a will of its own. He pressed the command from the colony's main communication array, which Jiho's engineers had quietly repaired and enhanced. A signal burst forth. It was not a weapon of energy. It was a pulse of precise, resonant code. It was the opposite of the Consensus's weapon. Where theirs had been a chaotic, destructive scramble, this was a key. A perfect mathematical counter-signature dot. It did not target biology. It targeted the specific quantum lock circuits that were the foundation of every piece of advanced Consensus technology. The design was flawlessly reverse-engineered from the resonance weapon's own signature. The pulse washed out in a silent, invisible wave. On the sleeping keeper of law, every light went out. Then, every light on every Consensus ship in the system winked out. In orbit, fighters coasted, dead. Cruisers became dark, cold tombs of metal. Their engines died. Their weapon systems went inert. Their communications fell silent. The quantum locks in their power cores, their drives, their computers, had all been permanently fused. They were not broken. They were closed. They were now just complex hunks of sculpture, floating in the void. On the surface, Taeyeon looked up. He saw the running lights of the Consensus ships vanish, one by one, like candles being snuffed. The only light left was from the stars and the soft glow from the Unyielding. "You came here with the power to unmake minds," Taeyeon said into the silence, his voice now the only sound on the entire world. "We leave you with the consequence. Your tools no longer work. Your certainty is gone. You are left here in the dark with only what you have done. Look at it, remember it. This is the price of crossing the line." He turned and walked back to his ship. He did not look back. The Unyielding lifted off, silent as a shadow, and slipped back into the void, leaving the orbit of Sagan III cluttered with dead metal, and the planet below holding its 10,000 silent witnesses under the indifferent stars. The galaxy held its breath. The news from Sagan III was not a roar of victory, but a chilling whisper that spread through every diplomatic channel and trader's network. The Consensus's mighty peacekeeping fleet had not been defeated in battle. It had been rendered obsolete. Their ships sat in the dark around a poisoned world, powerless. The technological confidence that had been the bedrock of their civilization had been shattered with a silent pulse. They were not conquered. They were humiliated. The Galactic Consensus High Council had no precedent for this. An enemy that did not seek territory, did not issue demands, and did not fight with weapons they understood. The humans had not even bothered to destroy the ships. They had simply turned them off, leaving them as a stark public monument to failure. The cost to retrieve the crews and the dead hulls was immense. The political cost was greater. Member species began to question. If the humans could do this, what did that say about the Consensus's supposed supremacy? A request for parley, a word that meant talk but really meant surrender, was sent through neutral channels. It was not addressed to the human government. It was addressed specifically to Fleet Admiral Tae-Yun Lee and diplomat Yuna Kim. The location was a neutral station, a massive trading hub built by an ancient race that cared only for commerce in the star system of Lyra. Tae-Yun agreed. The Unyielding made the journey, this time with its stealth systems inactive. It arrived openly, a sleek black dagger sliding into the busy port. It was smaller than the Consensus battleships that hung at a wary distance, but every eye on the station watched it. Its very presence spoke of the quiet at Sagan-3. The meeting hall was a circular room, with a clear dome looking out at the nebula that colored the Lyran sky. The Consensus delegation was large. Admirals, diplomats, and scientists filled one side, their faces a mixture of anxiety and lingering pride. Admiral KRTH was not present. He had been relieved for consultations. On the other side, there were only two humans. Yuna Kim, wearing a simple, dark gray suit, and Fleet Admiral Tae-Yun Lee in his crisp uniform with no medals, only a small black band on his arm. Between them on the table was a small, silent hologram projector, the head of the Consensus Council. An elderly being named Elderon with wise, tired eyes spoke first. You have demonstrated a formidable capability, one that violates the very galactic laws you agreed to uphold. The use of targeted entropy fields, the weaponization of "we used no weapons." Tae-Yun interrupted, his voice calm but filling the room. We used a key. You built a lock that could break a mind. We simply found the key that fits that same lock. You aimed it at flesh. We aimed it at metal. The violation was yours. We merely returned it to you. A murmur went through the Consensus side. A scientist leaned forward. The quantum lock technology is forbidden for a reason. Its destabilizing potential was demonstrated on 10,000 teachers, farmers, and children on Sagan III. Yuna Kim finished, her voice like ice. Do not lecture us on destabilization. You wrote the first chapter of this book. We simply chose to close it. Elderon held up a calming hand. The past is tragic. We are here to discuss the future. Terms for a ceasefire. Reparations for the unfortunate incident. Protocols to ensure this does not happen again. You will, of course, surrender the means of this counterpulse technology. Tae-Yun almost smiled. It was a cold thing. There will be no terms. There will be no reparations paid by us. And we will surrender nothing. Silence. Then outrage. You cannot dictate to the consensus. A diplomat sputtered. We are not dictating, Una said. She tapped the projector. The hologram lit up, showing a map of human space. A soft, red line glowed along its borders. It was not an aggressive, jagged barrier. It was a simple, clean circle. We are informing. This is the new boundary. The unyielding limit. What does that mean? Eldaron asked, his weariness deepening. It means, Tayan said, leaning forward, that humanity will join no consensus that holds it in chains. We will trade. We will talk. We will explore. Come in peace, and you will find us warmer than any star. He paused, and his eyes moved from face to face on the other side of the table. But threaten our people's essence again, their mind, their spirit, their home, and you will face the silence and the storm that follows it. What happened at Sagan 3 was not an attack. It was a statement, a demonstration of consequence. The next time, we will not demonstrate. We will simply act, and there will be no meeting afterwards to discuss it. The Eldaron seemed to shrink. You are isolating yourselves. You are choosing a path of solitude and fear. No, Una said. We are choosing a path of clarity. You believed your laws made you safe. They made you cruel. Our limit is not a law written on paper. It is a promise written in the memory of Sagan 3. Break it, and you break any chance of peace with us, forever. The meeting ended not with a treaty, but with an understanding. The consensus delegation left, defeated not by force, but by a will they could not bend. The humans had not won a war. They had redefined the rules of existence between species. On the journey home, Tayan stood on the bridge of the Unyielding, looking at the stars. Una joined him. They will call us monsters, she said quietly. Isolationalists. Dangerous radicals. They called the people of Sagan 3 pacified, Tayan replied. Their words mean less to me now. We are not monsters. We are simply unyielding. They forced us to choose between being victims or becoming something they could not ignore. We chose the latter. Back in the Sol system, life began to change, but not in the way the galaxy expected. Humanity did not militarize further. They did not build a grand fleet. Project Charybdis was stood down, its technologies archived and guarded. The hidden shipyards went quiet again. The strength was not in the weapons, but in the proven will to use them if the line was crossed. The unyielding limit was added to all galactic charts. For traders and peaceful explorers, crossing it was seamless. For the military ships of the consensus and others, a new protocol was silently agreed upon. They requested permission, and they always kept their weapons powered down. On Mars, in the Strategic Command bunker, Sojin Choi and Jiho Kong watched the final reports come in. Their work was done for now. Jiho looked at the schematics for the quantum lock, the technology that had saved them and damned the consensus. Do we destroy the research? He asked. Sojin shook her head. No, we protect it. We learn from it. Not to use it, but to remember the cost of its existence. It is not a weapon. It is a memory of a red line. Years later, a small monument was built on Mars. It was not a statue of a hero or a ship. It was a simple, polished stone wall. On it were etched 10,000 names, flowing in endless, quiet lines. The first name was Minsu Park. The second was June Park. People would come and touch the names, feeling the cool stone. They did not come to feel anger. They came to remember the price of the line in the stars. They came to remember that their peace was not given, but guarded by a quiet, terrible promise. The galaxy learned. They learned that humanity was not the strongest, nor the oldest, nor the most advanced. But in council meetings and strategy sessions, When a course of action involving humanity was discussed, someone would always ask, quietly, "But what of their red line?" And the discussion would shift, for they had learned that to cross it was to invite not a war of fire, but an unyielding, silent, and absolute end.